Minister, in the public gallery today we have 3 different groups of tenants numbering about over 100 different families and individuals who are facing eviction at the hands of vulture funds. In one case, one group are from your own constituency, from Grove Park, Richmond Street and Rosedale, who a company called Val Issuer, Vulture Fund, are trying to evict. One is from my own area, St Helens Court in Dún Laoghaire. This is the 4th attempt that vulture funds have made to exploit loopholes, either of sale or substantial refurbishment, to evict these people in the last 2 years. And the final group are from Emmet, Lodge, Manor and Court in Inchicore, where there are about 50 families, again facing eviction by Mill Street Projects, interestingly the same group that are trying to evict the people in Dún Laoghaire. Now the question is, what are you going to do to stop these vulture funds evicting these people into homelessness?
Minister has 2 minutes.
Thank you, Lesley Corlin. Thank you, Deputy, for the question. And your guests are very welcome into the Chamber today. The Residential Tenancies Board was established as an independent statutory body under the Residential Tenancies Act of 2004 to 2019, with one of its key functions being to resolve disputes between landlords and tenants. Due to the quasi-judicial and independent role of the RTB, it would be inappropriate for me as Minister to intervene in specific disputes. A number of measures have been introduced in recent years with the objective of improving security of tenure for tenants under the Residential Tenancies Acts. Section 34 of the 2004 Act provides that a landlord must state a reason for the termination in any notice served, in accordance with the allowable grounds for terminations. Through an amendment introduced in 2016, where a landlord proposes to sell 10 or more units within a single development at the same time, that sale is subject to the existing tenants remaining in situ, other than in exceptional circumstances. In addition, the Residential Tenancies Amendment Act of 2019 provides that where a landlord terminates a tenancy because he or she intends to sell the property, he or she must enter into a contract for sale within 9 months of the termination date, and if not, must offer to relet to a former tenant who provides their contact details. The 2019 Act also provides that where a landlord terminates a tenancy because he or she needs vacant possession to substantially refurbish or renovate the property, that property must be offered back to the former tenant who provides their contact details upon completion of the works. Also, such a termination notice must contain or be accompanied by a written certificate of a registered professional under the Building Control Act of 2007, such as an architect or surveyor, stating that the proposed substantial refurbishment or renovation works would pose a health and safety risk necessitating vacation by the tenants, and that such a risk would be likely to exist for at least 3 weeks. The 2019 Act provides additional powers for the RTB to investigate and sanction landlords who engage in improper conduct, including non-compliance with the tenancy termination provisions. My department will continue to keep the effectiveness and enforcement of the security of tenure provisions in these acts under review.
I get 1 minute.
Minister, all 3 of these cases demonstrate that your legislation is riddled with loopholes that unscrupulous vulture funds who lack any compassion or humanity. See, your laws assume that landlords, and I'm sure there's lots of individual landlords out there, actually care about their tenants or have a scintilla of compassion or humanity. What these 3 cases demonstrate is that there are vulture funds out there who don't want to be landlords, they don't give a damn about tenants, they don't care about making people homeless, they just see the property as an asset they can sweat, and the best way to sweat it is to evict people, exploiting loopholes, in particular the loophole around substantial refurbishment, or the loopholes around sale, or in the case of Dún Laoghaire now, because of the Tyrrellstown Amendment, there's 11 tenants, but they move to evict 8, and then they'll try and evict the other 3 a little bit further down the line. Okay? So we need a ban on evictions on the grounds of sale. We need a tightening up of the issue of refurbishment so that it can't be used to justify evictions, and we need the passing of the anti-evictions bill, which was passed by the majority of this Dáil, but which you are blocking, which will prevent many of these evictions. Do you recognise there's a problem? Minister. Are you going to address it in order to help these people avoid homelessness?
Minister's 1 minute.
Thank you, Lesley Corlin. Thank you, Deputy, for the follow-up question. The RTB has confirmed that a number of cases related to the question have been referred through its independent dispute resolution and are still ongoing. The RTB replaces the courts for the majority of landlord and tenant disputes, and it's important that all parties are afforded due process in order to ensure that the system of dispute resolution is legally robust. Deputy, I am precluded from interfering with the judicial nature of the RTB, just like it would be improper for me to interfere with planning applications or planning decisions. What I will say, though, to you, Deputy, is the reforms that we brought forward to protect tenants were not my laws, they're the laws of this Oireachtas, and they could only be passed if they had the majority support of the Oireachtas, because the government is in the minority. These are very ambitious reforms to protect tenants who find themselves in this very difficult situation. So we have strengthened those protections, and we have talked about the ban of sale with tenants of vacant possession before, and how that wouldn't be a solution, because you would still allow the person who's buying the property to then serve a notice to quit. So all you're doing is displacing the problem from one landlord to a new buyer to someone else without actually solving it. What we are trying to do with the protections we have brought in place is to make sure that tenants have the strongest rights possible. So where there may be a breach of those rights, they can find resolution through the RTB and find it quickly. And where those rights are upheld, that they have access back to the property that they have been evicted from. Thank you.
Final question, 1 minute.
Minister, first of all, the tax breaks you've given these people, the meetings that were held with them in 2013 by Michael Noonan to invite them in, have created the conditions where these vultures are operating. And I repeat that what your responses there do not address the problems that are faced by these people. And it's no good saying the PRTB, you're independent from the PRTB. Your government proposed the legislation which is failing to protect these tenants. We have proposed alternatives, such as the anti-evictions bill, as have other opposition parties, to close down these loopholes. You resist them for reasons I do not understand, when it is as clear as day that these vultures don't care about tenants. They're not interested even in being landlords. They are buying property to evict people and then to flip it on because the asset will have increased value. That is what they are doing. And society and the tenants are paying the price, because they will end up at homeless services because you failed to address the problem. Now, are you going to address the problem, or is this going to continue to happen? And what have you got to say to the people above who are faced with this situation? What are they supposed to do?
Minister's final response, 1 minute.
Thank you, Lass, and thank you, Deputy. Deputy, we have made a number of changes to the laws to make sure that where we are constrained by the Constitution, we are not constrained so that we cannot rebalance things back in terms of the public interest. The Tyrrellstown Amendment, which was brought forward to protect people in these situations, has stood up when it has been tested in the Residential Tenancies Board. It has stood up when it has been tested. But, Deputy,
Minister, without interruption.
I cannot interfere in matters that are before the RTB. It would be illegal and improper and unethical for me to do so. And so I'm very, very sorry for the plight of people who are facing themselves in these very difficult circumstances, who find themselves in housing insecurity and are vulnerable as a result. But that does not mean that I can go and break the law. It does not mean that I can interfere in things like RTB cases or legal cases or on board renewal decisions, where people want me to for different reasons. That's why we have brought in these very robust changes in the law to protect tenants, so they do have rights when they bring cases to the RTB and they are successful, rights to go back into the property, where the landlord or the person who owns the property has been offside. They have those rights now because we brought them in. We've also given more robust powers to the RTB. They can go through criminal sanctions as well as administrative sanctions now because of the new powers that this Oireachtas introduced only earlier this year. That is the work that we are doing to try and protect tenants. And it's very important that we continue to do that work. And also, where people find themselves in housing insecurity, and we'll be addressing this later, that we continue to have the supports in place to prevent people from having to go into emergency accommodation. And I'll repeat it again because it's important noting, for the first 6 months of this year, for every 2 families that presented to homeless services, 1 was found a home immediately. Thank you.